Hello and welcome to another Stellarian Games video. In this episode we're going to be making a temple or a church. I wanted to make a building that sort of had the feel of both. It has the flying buttresses on the side as well as kind of a more traditional triangular and pillared front like a Greek temple. But I wanted it to have kind of both elements to have a little bit more of an abstract feel to it. So this episode is going to be mostly the construction of the bulk of the temple, and the second video is going to be more of the detailing work, the windows, and a lot more of the painting stuff. So let's just jump right in and see the construction.
Okay, to start off this project, we're going to use some 3/4 inch XPS foam, and we're just going to measure out the base of the temple, cutting out a little bit of a notch for the stairway up to the temple. Then taking a couple sheets and splitting them in half. This will be the start of the temple walls. You can see I have some 3D printed windows. I'll have the links to those down below. I'm tracing those onto the walls and cutting out a hole for each one of those windows. Now I'm notching out another piece of XPS foam, and these will be the support pillars for the flying buttresses. This is just going to be the shape of the actual part that joins the temple to the flying buttress support, and gluing those two together. Now working on the main archway for the inside of the temple, cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. Then texturing the base of the temple with a green stuff roller. I believe this is a pavement roller. Then starting to texture the stonework for the inside of the temple. All of the arches have arch stones, and then the rest of it is going to be getting a 1/4 inch slice down for the stonework, and these are going to be basic brick pattern stones. Nothing too fancy on this. I'm using a homemade tool. Again, this is a 3D printed tool. I'll have a link to it down below as well. If you want to download the tool, it helps make bricks like this very quickly. They're not very fancy or anything, but it does make quick work of brickwork. Now just slicing off the stairs leading up to the temple. And giving them some texture, stonework texture as well. Now I'm texturing the side of the base so that it looks like stonework as a foundation of the entire temple. I'm hot gluing that main centerpiece and hot gluing on the flying buttresses. I decided not to glue on the walls yet, as I figured it might be easier to do the painting at this stage before the walls are attached. Cutting out a stairway for the leading down to a crypt or a cellar of some sort. And then marking off 1/4 inch lines for more stonework for the interior walls. Tracing on some arches for doorways, cutting those out with the X-Acto knife. I'm saving that styrofoam, and I'll use that for the actual doors in just a little bit. setting the guide pretty narrow and slicing those doors pretty thin. Then just giving it a simple texture. Adding some planks for bracing on the door. And then gluing those back into place. Now we're going to glue those interior walls in place. And giving this a black Mod Podge first coat. Again, I wanted to do the painting at this stage because it would be a lot easier to do dry brushing and stuff with the walls separate. I spray painted those 3D printed parts black, and now I'm just gluing those into place on one side. We'll glue another set of it on the other side later on in this series. I'm just giving it a dry brush of kind of a sandy tan color. And then gluing on those interior walls. Now I'm measuring out the actual doorway entrance wall, which will be attached to the roof later on. For the back wall, we're going to use a rose window. Again, I'll have that rose window pattern for 3D printing available in the description down below. Texturing the stonework around the rose window. Now I'm cutting the triangular sections for the roof and cutting a long, narrow section for the actual roof panels. Beveling the edge of that so that they'll join at the peak and hot gluing those together. Then hot gluing that front wall onto the roof. That will come away with the roof so that the interior is a little bit easier to access. Now I'm using my pillar cutter and cutting some pillars for the front of the temple. I'm slicing chunks of it out, and I'm going to give those middle sections a little bit of a texture. Just touching the hot wire cutter to give it that column look. Now I'm hot gluing those columns back together. Now I'm using some Sculpey, just basic white Sculpey, and making a decorative fascia for the front of the temple. I didn't want it to just be plain stonework. It's kind of a little bit of a different approach for me. Now I'm tracing out on one of those triangle sections and then ran it through the hot wire cutter to create kind of a frame for that frieze on top of the temple. Hot gluing that into place and then hot gluing the columns into place as well. Adding some decorative work to the front of the temple and along the side of the roof as well. These are just simple squares cut in. Adding some smaller windows for the back section. Now cutting out rectangles for the upper towers. Using that same tool and cutting in brickwork. And gluing the back panel together. Now this is the Belltower section. I'm cutting out little arches and an individual doorway. All of the arch sections have texture, and I'm cutting out an angled roof that will be inset into this tower. And the other tower is just kind of a blank tower.
Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe down below. And stay tuned for the second video in this series, where we're going to get into a little bit more of the detailing work. I'll see you again next time. Thanks.